Hello, this is Donnie Smith with Butler Community College, and today we're going to show you how to replace a bedside. We had a Chevrolet pickup come in, had a damaged bedside, had the bumper that has been smashed into it, and we're going to replace it. Well, we're going to take the old bedside off and put a new bedside on. And in this video tutorial, we're going to show you how to remove that and how to install another one. Now you can see in this picture we have the bedside. We already ordered it and have it in before we started the repairs, and we can go ahead and take that bedside before we do anything else and set it up to the pickup and make sure that we have the correct part. And that's something that you always want to do, is make sure that your parts are correct, because the last thing you want is to get that bedside off and realize it's the wrong one. Then you'll have a lot of complications at that time. So to eliminate any surprises, we're going to set it up there, make sure we got the right parts, and now we can continue the repairs. Another thing you want to do is inspect the part for any damage that it may receive during shipping. And if you'll notice in this picture, we did have a dent in it. And if you're working for the body shop, you may want to negotiate that with your suppliers to see if they will pay an hour on it or something like that, or the shipping company. There's different things you can do, and that's between your business and your negotiations. But here at the school, we're not worried about that, because it's a good practice for us anyway. So we just went ahead and repaired the damage, and it made it very easy for us, because we're able to get to the back side, as you can see in one of the pictures, where we can work the damage from both sides, which you don't have that opportunity to do that a lot on these newer parts. So we did work the damage out. First, we got a 36 grit block, and we kind of sanded it, cross-sanded a little bit, and that helped us indicate the highs and lows. And we found it, we worked it out, and then we could go ahead and continue with the repairs. Okay, now you can see that we are removing the tailgate. Now you need to remove the tailgate because we're going to actually take the bed off in order to replace the bedside. Now we are going to R&I to tailgate. Now that stands for remove and install. That's where you take a part off and you're going to put the same part back on. Now the bedside, we are going to R&R that, and that stands for remove and replace. That's where you're going to remove the old part and you're going to put a new part back on. So first step is we're going to R&I the tailgate. Next, we need to remove the bolts that screw into the filler neck for the gas tank, because the gas tank will stay, with the chassis on the frame, and whenever we lift the bed off, it'll be lifted off that. So you need to disconnect the filler neck from the bedside. And we also need to take the taillights out. We need to take the taillights out and the wiring, because all the wiring will stay with the frame. And when we lift the bed off, we don't want to get caught up with the wires and damage them or anything. So we're going to go ahead and take the taillights out and drop the wiring so that we can pull the bed off. Now in these next couple of photos, I'd like you to look inside the bed, because we are taking some of the hardware off, some of the parts, and we are placing them in bags, and we're going to label these bags, and we're going to store them in an area that's designated for this job. So that is very important, to stay organized and keep your parts labeled and know exactly where they go. Now this is especially important in a school environment like we are at. Different people may be working on this project, and no matter who took it apart, if someone else is putting it together and it's labeled like it should be, there'll be no question. And I think it's good practice for anyone, even if you're a technician in a shop. Now if you're doing a restoration job, I mean, that thing may be apart for 6 months to a year to more. So if you'll take the time and get in the habit of doing this, I think it'll really save you a lot of time in the long run. So it'll eliminate a lot of problems that could arise, hunting for parts at the last minute, not being able to find what you need. That's a issue that you could eliminate. So really recommend staying organized with your parts. Now before we just start cutting and drilling out spot welds to take that bedside off, first we need to straighten some of the parts, and I always have questions, or students question me about why are we straightening this, but I think it's a good idea to go ahead and straighten the best you can the parts that you're going to be replacing, because what this does is whenever you pull the damage out, it helps realign the parts that's attached to, the structure that's attached to, where the new part will fit on correctly. So you can see in this picture how the bumper has caved into the bedside, and what we're going to do is we're just going to hook a chain up on the frame machine and pull that bumper out of the bedside, and that'll give us access to get to it better. It'll straighten the bumper up and help realign the parts that's attached to. So we went ahead and pulled the bumper out. Now you can see that it's pulled out. We have better access to the bumper to go ahead and start stripping the bumper down. Now another thing we're going to do is work on this front panel. This wasn't nothing to do with the bedside. I think actually a four-wheeler or something must have been slammed up against the front panel of this bedside and smashed it clear into the cab where it was hitting the cab. But we're going to go ahead and hook up to that, and we're going to pull the front panel out until we realign, where it's straight. So we welded some tabs to the front panel, hooked a couple chains up to them, and made a pull and got that damage pulled out. Now once we had all the pulling and aligning done, we went ahead and removed the bed bolts so we could take the bed bolts off, and all the wiring, tail lights, gas filler neck, all that's already been taken loose. So all we had to do is take those bed bolts off and lift the bed off, and then we could finish the repairs of taking the bedside off the pickup. Now if you look in this picture, you can see where the front of that bed hit the cab. So we went ahead while we had the bed off, and we went ahead and repaired the cab as well to prevent it from rusting any further. Okay, now you can see that we have the bed assembly off, and we've got a front view of it now. And what we need to do now is start locating the spot welds. Now what a spot weld is, it's a weld from a factory, and what that is a machine that pushes the metal together real tight, and then it heats it up and fuses it together, and there's actually no type of filler rod or anything used. It just heats the metal together and kind of like melts it all together. And the way you locate these is it looks like little dimples or little indentions that's in the metal, usually really easy to locate. Once we locate them here in a minute, we'll talk about a couple of ways to remove them. But in the next photo, you're going to see where we've got a little bit of a surprise. Okay, now if you look at that little tab, you can see where there's that little indentation that I was talking about. That is a factory spot weld. But if you look on the bedside that's been welded, that piece, that's where other spot welds should be. But if you look at it closely, you really can't see the indentation. In fact, you see little grind marks. Now what that indicates is that has been plug welded with a MIG welder. It's and then ground the weld smooth. So this bedside has been replaced before. Now we didn't notice that, at the first time we didn't really pay attention to that, but this bedside has actually been replaced before. Now this makes it a little bit more difficult whenever we're replacing it again, because as you can see those grind marks, but we don't know exactly where the center of this weld is. And we need to know where the center is because that's where we need to drill at. So it takes a little bit more time trying to determine where exactly these welds are. And in this photo is just some other areas you can see that's been ground, and you kind of see that where it has been welded. But again, finding the exact center is a little more difficult. If the spot welds are in a flange area, you can use a spot welder cutter that kind of clamps to it, makes it a lot easier. But where it's not, where you don't have that in a flange area, you're going to have to drill through. First you find the spot weld, and then you get a center punch to make a little set area for the drill to drill, and you tap it lightly, and then you get a small bit and go ahead and drill all the way through it, and then you get a bigger drill bit that's actually going to cut the outside of the weld of the outer panel. Now you don't want to weld through both panels with your 8 millimeter size bit. You just want to drill the outside, which will cut that spot weld. So all those areas you're going to go around and you're going to drill those out, and then if you can get to it with a spot welder cutter, that's even a faster way to do that. Now it's really hard to tell what he's doing in this photo. I didn't get a real good picture of it, but if you look, in the wheel well area, he's got a hammer and a tool, that you call a seam buster. And this is a really good tool to use once you have them drilled apart, and this helps separate the panels from each other. Some technicians may use an air hammer, but that can cause a lot of damage to the part that you're, not the interstructural too. So I like to use that seam buster. It works real well. It splits them real easy, and it just takes a little bit of hammering. So, but again, some may recommend a air chisel as well. So just kind of a preference. Now you can see in this photo that the student is using a pair of vice grips, in order to get that top rail off. We also found out that the top rail had adhesive, which was also holding the panel on, so we kind of had to peel that back in order to get that off. Okay, so we got the bedside replaced. Now what you need to do is there may be a little damage to the flanges and around the bedside where it was attached. So we're going to go around all those areas and make sure they're good and straight. We're going to hammer and dolly any damaged areas or any area that needs attention. So we're going to go ahead and hammer and dolly that, and then we're going to go around and where the welds were, we're going to grind that, clean it up, and get it ready for the new panel. And I got a picture here of the old bedside, and I just wanted to note that anything that you take off, I always keep the parts, even if I think that I am completed with them, until the job's done. You don't know how many times that I have got rid of a part, threw it away or whatever, and then to come and find out there's a couple of clips or something that I needed in it. So even though it's a junk part, trash part or whatever, just go ahead and hold on to your parts until the job is completed and out the door. And here's a photo. I just kind of playing around with my camera a little bit with some effects, but what the photo's for is to show you where we have applied some corrosion protection, some weld through primer where we're going to be welding at, because once we put that bedside on, we're not going to be able to get to the inside of this. So it's important to use the proper corrosion protection before installing the bedside. Now we're starting to fit the bedside on and get it aligned so that we can start welding it. Now there's a couple of ways that you can do this. One is you can use a combination of you can use a MIG weld and plug welds with a combination of adhesives, like it was the top rail and a lot of those areas you can use adhesives. Or you can also use a combination of plug welds and spot welds, and we're going to use our spot welder so that the students can get familiar with it, and we'll show you how to use that in the next photo. Now in the next few photos you'll see where we are using the spot welder, resistant spot welder, and what that is, it's similar to the factory spot weld where it compresses the metal together and then welds it together. And no filler material is used, no filler rods, just fuses the metal from the heat. And this is real good. Now before you use this, something you might keep in mind is it has to have metal contact. So where you're welding at, you need to remove the coating so that whenever it welds it can make a good connection and make a good weld. Okay, now we got the bedside on, it's welded on. Now in the next few photos you're going to see where we're doing some body repair. We're doing some hammer and dolly work to that front panel that was damaged. We're finishing out that repair that was damaged on the bedside, and then we're going to go around with all the bare metal areas, and we're going to shoot it with some epoxy primer for corrosion protection, and then we're going to shoot a couple of coats of urethane primer to give us something as a fill primer so that we can block sand it and get it ready for paint. So the bodywork's complete on this, and we primed it and block sanded it and got it ready for paint. Then we got it in the paint booth and got it cleaned up and ready to spray. Now, on this particular job, we painted just the bedside and what needed painted. Normally, I would want to recommend to blend into adjacent panels so that you get a better color match. But the person we was doing this for really didn't want to, spend more time or the cost of doing that. And I told them it probably is not going to match that good because, these metallic colors like this have a hard time matching. But we recently switched to Waterborne, PPG's Waterborne line of paint, and I have been well pleased and surprised how well these matches color, how well these colors match. This paint job came out and it was a very good match. So what we did from there, we took the bed out of the booth, we put it back on the pickup, bolted it on, kind of reversed what we did taking it off. We put the bed on, put the the fuel filler neck on, put the taillights in, and the tailgate on. And that was it. We completed the job. It looked good, and the students did a great job.